Hey guys, Nigel here. Welcome back for part 2 of this big buff for beginners build. Our B52 for monogram / Revell and all the different kit numbers that are associated with it. So here you can see we've got our undercarriage legs here on the left, which are the Mr. Surfacer and those ejector pin marks is still drying, and we've got our wheels over here, which the glue will still be drying. It'll be pretty much hard, but best to let it go with stuff like tyres, fuselage halves, major stuff. Let the glue go really hard before you start messing with it. We'll cover that when we come to doing seams. And on the subject of doing seams, if you remember, I said that I wanted to basically go ahead and build sub-assemblies before we crack on with anything else, so that these parts can be sitting and drying. Otherwise what happens is you're building away, you get to here, bump, you stop because you glue these together, and then you have to wait for the glue to dry and everything before you can start working on the seams, and you basically stop, or you just carry on. So what I like to do is get those done up front, and we're also going to get the bombs put together. So these tank halves here, we've got 2 of them, so there's one either side, and they are going to be handed. Now we can see here, this is something I do like that Monogram used to do, and manufacturers don't tend to do it these days. They got the part numbers actually marked on the parts themselves, so when you cut them off the sprue, you can't, get them wrong. So we can come along now with our cutters, and because we've got our Tamiya nippers, we can go in really close and just basically get all these off the sprue. So I'll go in for all the ones from this side first. That one's already broken away, and then we can come along. I must say, if you've got the old Revell with the green plastic, it's not as nice to work with as this is, as the grey plastic. But you'll still get a lovely model out of it at the end of the day, but it's just not going to be so nice when it comes to doing seams and stuff, because the plastic, I find, tends to be a bit harder. The other little tip for you, especially when you're doing smaller models, when you get to this sort of situation, you've got all this sprue. If you cut this sprue off, get rid of it, or you can keep it in your box for keep the long straight bits for making stretch sprue and stuff. So you can do that. Get rid of that short piece, so we can keep these long pieces here. At the end of the day, what you'll find is once you're a few steps into the build, you can sort of get rid of the box and just keep everything in a takeaway tray or something. So we've got our 4 parts here. Now, as you can see on here, stage 15 is saying repeat for other side. So we've got tank half 88 and 89 going together. So this is 89 and this is 88. Now again, I will bet you that they've engineered this in such a way, there you go, clever engineering. Manufacturers need to take note of this. What they've done here, you've got a left and a right hand side, obviously, okay? So what they've done, they've made the left hand side of the, starboard wing has got the pins, okay, and the right hand side of the port wing has got pins, so you can't mistakenly put them together unless of course you cut the pins off and force yourself to put them together. So that one, number 90, has to go with 91, like so, okay, and then 89 and 88 will go together like so. So again, this is fantastic engineering, so well done guys. It amazes me with these older kits. This is 1968. The shape is correct. You've got great engineering like this in there. You've got lovely strong undercarriage legs. Everything is looking good. Okay, the model's a little toy-like, I know, but everything's looking good. Come along a few years later, you got AMT came out with the B52G and the B52G and H. The fuselage is too skinny. There's no bomb bay. The nose is all the wrong shape. The wing tanks are the wrong shape. On the H, the engines are too small. I believe there's an issue with the canopy, and all stuff like that. A few years later, come along 2017-18, Model Collect come along with their B52 G and H, and again, shape issues on the nose, shape issues on the tail, undercarriage bays incorrect, noses are terrible, and all sorts of issues like that. Again, wing tanks are incorrect, and it's amazing that these guys back in 1968 got everything right, and these days they're not. So you may think you're building a simple beginner's kit here, but of all the 72nd scale B52s out there, a lot of people would agree that this is probably the best. Okay, so even though it's the only D available at the moment, but it can be converted. So anyway, enough waffle. So we've got these parts off the sprue, so we want to get rid of these sprue nibs. So I've got my zebra sanding sticks here from Infini, and this is a 220. I'm just going to roughly take that away like that, just a couple of strokes just to get rid of it, and then I'm going to go over the surface that we're going to be gluing together just to make sure there's no raised detail or anything on there, or nothing raised. Particularly with a model this old, you may get some issues in the mould. Remember, if the mould gets a little nick in it, then that'll show on here as a raised lump, which will really get in your way. So there we go, just like that. So we can put those together and we can see that they fit beautifully. A little bit of mismatch around the back end, but we can see here that scribe line isn't quite lining up. Okay, so I say scribe line, it's actually a raised line. This is all raised panel lines, this model. But we're looking around at the nose. On the nose, that panel line isn't lining up. You can see there. Okay, that's not lining up properly. And on the back, that panel line isn't lining up properly. But the front edge of the pylon is perfect. So we'll ignore that, and then we'll just deal with this. Okay, and we'll deal with that later, should I say. So that's all looking lovely. Now, gluing this together, you could come along and use your contactor, go all the way around, and then glue them together and clamp them with pegs or tape or whatever. You could come along and hold it together with your fingers or clamps or whatever like this, and then if you hold it in the middle, the ends will spring apart and you can put glue in there and it will capillary down. You can get to the inside from there, so we can get plenty, and we want to make sure we get plenty of glue. I'm going to try and show you here what happens. If you come along and you haven't got enough glue, you may come along and you'll go like this, and you put a little drop on there and a drop on there and a drop on there like that, and you think, right, that's going to capillary along, and that's glued together lovely. Okay, alright, so we'll let that just go dry a bit, and that's enough to hold it together. Okay, so you think, got a lovely join there, and we'll just go along, we'll do the front, work our way around, and we're job done. Let me show you what happens. I don't know if you can see it on here, but basically what happens, the glue is only on the outside edge. Okay, you can see the glue hasn't gone right the way down and it hasn't gone all the way along. Okay, and you can see it on this one as well, I expect. You can see there the glue is only gone about halfway down the face. So that's why it's sometimes better to do it this way, and I'll show you another method on the other two afterwards. So luckily on here we've got hand hold, so we don't have to worry about getting glue everywhere. So we can take our contactor, there's too much coming out at the end there, and we can just go around the edge. We're not going to worry about how much we put on, not going to worry about it oozing out. Obviously you don't want to flood it, and if you know, I didn't worry about taking that flash off the end because it doesn't matter. Just go along, and this way you can guarantee you've got glue not only all the way around but all the way in, all the way across that face. Okay, so now we can put these together, which is easier said than done, with my thumb in the way. He says, fumble thumbs. There we go. The back end is not together properly. And there we go. So we've got that together like that now. You can see that when we push it in certain areas, the glue oozes out. And that glue will now get to work in there and do a great job of welding it together. Now again, you've got a little bit of clearance, the pins are slightly smaller than the holes, so you want to make sure, if you can see on here, I can show you, you can see that I can get those parts to misalign by sliding them apart. So it's no good just gluing them together and putting them down and walking away. You need to make sure everything's lined up, because otherwise when you come to sand the joint, if the parts are, if you're looking down the end, down here, if the parts are like that, when you sand the top and bottom you end up with two flats. So the best thing to do is using in my case what little thumbnail I've got, just feel across, so make sure you haven't got a big step one way. If your finger slides easily that way but there's a step that way, it means that this one is higher, closer to the camera than this one. You want to get them even, as even as you can, so that when you sand the joint it's easier to keep everything round. Okay, and you can see you've got these different length tabs on here. That's going to be to make sure that they go into the wings in the right side. So again, great engineering from a very old kit. Now you can see here, if I slide my thumb that way, it slides over easy. If I come that way, there's a step. So I just need to squeeze that and get that to align properly. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is come along with my extra thin, and I'm going to put some extra thin over the top of that seam, and then anywhere where there's a gap, anywhere where there's somewhere that it can go in, it will capillary into that joint. Just like so. And although this is a hot glue, you can see it's going everywhere on the surface. If you don't touch it, you'll be fine. If you go and rub it, you'll actually leave a mark in the plastic. So don't go rubbing it, just leave it. Okay, so there we go, and we can give that a squeeze. And we know now that we've got a really good joint. I don't think I did the front of the pylon, did I? And the other thing you can do if you really want to make sure is go inside there and you can run some glue down in. Get a paintbrush into your glue and get all the way down in there if you want to. But there you go. But you don't really want to go absolutely saturating it, because you'll end up with a very, very wet joint which will take a long time to dry and it will sink back a lot. So again, I'm just going to check my seams, make sure they're fairly even, and they are. It's the top that matters most, because that's what's going to be visible. The underside will only be seen if you turn the airplane up. And with a model this size, I don't think you'll be doing that very much. So we want to make sure the top is nice and level, or even. There we go. Cross that way, cross that way. There we are. Okay. Now what we can do now, I have got my G-Shock tin full of rubber bands. Now these things come from pound shops. I wouldn't bother with them on their large assemblies. Now this is holding itself together quite well, but if it was something that was likely to spring apart, don't use these, because they tend to they tend to snap when they get a whiff of the glue under any load. So quite often you glue this like this, you put it to one side, come back an hour later, the glue, the band is snapped and your parts have set apart. So don't go trusting them. You're better off with the, you know, the ordinary type rubber bands like this. We just get those on there like that, just in case that other one snaps. Go on. Okay, so that will hold that together and that one won't snap. And then on the back end, we can take a clothes peg and just clamp that together like so, just to make sure it doesn't move. A quick check of that seam again. We're all good. Yeah, front of the pylon's all good. There we go. So lovely. So that's one method of gluing those together. There is another way, and this is something that I find works very, very well. I'm just going to give these a clean up. Basically come along here, put these together, okay, and they are fitting together beautifully. Now, as I said, we can come along and we can put liquid cement in there, but we don't know that it's going to go all the way in. So we need to find a way of making sure it's going to go all the way in. what some people will tell you is to put rubber bands or tape on, hold it together, and then put your liquid glue on. Don't ever do that, because if I go and put some tape on here, okay, here's some modeller's masking tape. This is actually the Mr. Hobby stuff that comes from Premium Hobbies again. If I go and use this, and I put this tape on here, and I clamp it together, as soon as I put glue into that joint, the glue is going to come along under the tape and capillary out and ruin the surface. So don't ever tape it before the glue is at least gone tacky. Now, there is a way you can do this, and some would say it's not for beginners. I probably agree with them, but it's something, if you can do it now, and it's something you can get in the habit of, then it will work for you in the future. Okay, so you can see here, if I squeeze, I can open the end up. So if I open the end up, if I open too much, the glue won't go in there. But if I have it just so it's about a ½ millimeter gap, the glue will get pulled into that joint by capillary action. Okay, and you'll see lots of oozing in a minute. Oops, I let it run around there. Okay, and now I give that a squeeze, and you can see the glue is oozing out because it's gone all the way into that joint and it's nice and wet. Okay, so what do you do about the other end, he says? Get yourself a cocktail stick. He says prepared. I should have had a cocktail stick out, shouldn't I? I'm sorry. And I'm going to stick the cocktail stick in the joint, and I'm holding this end together where it's glued, and I'm going to stick this cocktail stick in there like that. And what I want to do is finish gluing the top. So I'm going to come along, put my glue in there, like so. It'll all capillary into that joint, just like that. And then make sure the back end's lined up. And then hold that together. Turn it over. Put some glue in this side. I can pull the stick back. Move the stick along. We'll do this again with the fuselage, so if you're not grasping this now, don't worry. It's a really good way of making sure the glue goes into the joint, because you'll notice here that I'm putting brushfuls of glue in this joint. There's no way I'd be able to do if I didn't hold it apart. Okay, and then when it comes to this bit at the end, put the glue in there, put some in there, let it all capillary around, pull that cocktail stick out, and there we go. And then again, we're just going to go around and make sure everything's lined up. The top is the most important. Now you can see here, stroke my thumb that way, nothing. If I go that way, there's a ridge, so I need to just give them a nudge. Better. Again, on the back end, the underside's gonna have to take care of itself. I'm not gonna make the top end worse so I can have a better bottom end. I know having a bottom end is good, but we've gone the other way now. There we go. It's got an even step that way. Even step that way, job done. So that's all glued together nicely, and then if you want to, you can come along here with the glue. We can make sure we got some on the inside of that seam, and there we go. So that's another method of doing it. And then once again, we can come along with our rubber bands. In fact, what I'll do is this time I'll do it this way round. There we go. So we've got rubber bands holding that all together now. I'm just going to check my seam hasn't moved. Nope. And then we'll have a nice job there. Nice round tank. Completely seamless. At least on the top. There we go. Okay, and then on the back, just get a clothes peg, put a clothes peg on there, that will hold it together. Don't clamp it here because you'll squeeze that together and pull the bottom apart. So you can see they've got an issue with the seam there on the bottom. In fact, it's the whole back end has moved, so it's always worth checking before the glue goes off. That's better. There we go. And there we are. So they can just go to one side now and be left to dry. So our tanks are together, okay, and they're done and they're waiting to dry. So they're just going to be left now to left for 24 hours, let the glue do its thing, and then we can work on the seams after that. Now, if you remember, I said I also wanted to put these pylons together because we've got a big seam down the front of the pylons, and I want to make sure that we that's all dry and hard before we go to work on it. So these instructions are a little bit complex. Let's have a look at what Revell have done. So if you're building the Revell kit, I think your life is going to be made a bit easier for you. Here we go. Now they're telling you here to actually put the pylons together, and they've got this mark in here, and I'm not exactly sure what that means. I'm going to go and have a look. Okay, I don't know what they're referring to there. I mean, the actual symbol is illustration of assembled parts. So that's just showing you the two assembled. I thought they were picking out something to be aware of. But basically, what we need to do is make sure we use the right parts for the correct pylon. So when we look here, it's saying left outboard. It has to be left outboard, left inboard, right inboard, right outboard. On an aircraft, it's always 1, 2, 3, 4. For the pylons, the engines would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But it's always the left, the port outer engine is number 1, and then it moves across towards starboard. So what we're going to do, we're going to build these pylons and then mark them, and I'm going to use a knife to mark them, and I'll show you how. So here we've got an assembly, and it's showing these two going together. According to struts, they're actually pylons. So these actual engine pylons, we're going to put them together, and it's saying here 79 and 80. So that's the right inboard, is 79 and 80. So that'll be number 3. So over here, we're going to start with number 1. So it's saying a repeat assembly procedure for left inboard using 66, 70, 72, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now the left outboard, repeat assembly procedure for left outboard using 68, 69, 71, 2, 5 and 6. So what we'll do is we'll find our pylons on here, and we've got the numbers on the inside of them. So here you can see we've got, for the left outboard, we've got 75 and 76 is the last two numbers. So 75 and 76. So we'll just get those two off the sprue, and we know that that is going to be our number 1 pylon. Okay. So we can just get those off like so, and then we can take a sanding stick and just make sure we're all flat and level. Notice I'm not worrying about the sprue nibs at this point because we're going to work on the seams anyway. So just come along, nip them off. I'm not worried about sanding them down or anything. And then again, just the sanding stick. And we're just making sure there's no lumps and bumps or anything anywhere, because as I say, this is an old kit. It's an old mould. It'll have lots of nicks and bits and pieces on it. So we know that these two go together, and they are going to go together like so. Okay. Now we need to be careful. Look inside here. There's an ejector pin mark. Now, when we look at the wings, is that going to affect the fit? And I can see that it's not, because they're basically just going to sit into a groove, so they won't affect any fit, otherwise we would remove them. But what I'm going to do is, with my knife, because I know this is pylon number 1, I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to go like this and make a nick in there. Okay, so that is pylon number 1. So we've got a mark in there. You can do the same on the other side if you want to, just to be sure. So there we go, pylon number 1, job done. So we can put these together. And again, if we give it a squeeze, you can see the front will come apart. So we'll take our glue, we'll take our glue and we'll just put a drop in there, and you can see it capillary along. Give it a little squeeze just to make sure it's gone into the joint. And then here we can come along underneath and get some glue in there. And the same again here underneath. Give it a squeeze, make sure we've got a gap. And I just want to make sure we have got a really good glued joint, because when we come to work on it, the last thing we want is to have to do rework because the seam reappears. Okay, and making sure everything's lined up. And then come along here. Again, give it a squeeze, the back end opens up for us. Just like that. There we go. Now I know from previous experience that these aren't a perfect fit, so what we're going to do is concentrate here. We're going to make sure that this edge here is all good. Okay, because this is the bit that matters, and then this round here we can sand and fill or whatever. Okay, and I want to make sure this is really welded together well. All right, so that's that one. So you can see you've got the line, the two nicks in there, so that's number one. Now, left inboard, repeat assembly for left inboard is 77 and 78. So we've got 77 and 78. You can see here on that one, this is exactly what I'm talking about. If you look on there, you can see there's an ejector pin mark on that edge, and that's exactly the thing we're looking for when we start sanding. If you don't do that, then you end up with a poor fit, a bad seam, and you don't know why. You can't work out why it's not going together. Again, we've got one there as well, look. So we're just going to gently sand everything away. Make sure we've got no lumps and bumps. There's another one there. This is another ejector pin mark there. This is the sort of thing you need to look out for, especially on these older models. But then saying that, some of the newer stuff is the same. Some of the latest Meng stuff has got some massive ejector pin marks all over them. But we'll cover that in another video. So these are going to go together like that. I'm going to mark these actually the same. So go in here, 1, 2. Okay, and then we can mark the other side as well if we want to. And another thing I would suggest, don't start using marker pen and stuff on your models, because if the marker pen ends up where there's going to be paint, it will keep coming back. You can cover it with whatever you like and it will keep coming back. So actually we can glue all this from the inside, can't we? So we've got a gap there. Where we can get the glue to go in and get it to capillary down the joint. There we are. Give that a squeeze. Make sure it's all gone together. Get some in there. As you can see, I'm giving it a squeeze so it deforms the shape and it makes the glue pull into the joint rather than just sit on the surface. And as I say, I mean, this is a 1968 kit. and they've got all this panel detailing on here. If you look at the Model Collect kits, 2050 years on, and they've got no detail on the pylons whatsoever. So it tells you something, doesn't it? I'll just put some down in there just to make sure. And there we go. I'm just going to put some in that pin, because I don't think I put any in that pin, did I? There we are, so that's our number 2. Okay, so I'm going to go on now and get number 3 and number 4 done off camera. There's no point in you watching me do it time and time again, and then I'll come back. Whew, I had a moment there. The sharper eyed amongst you may have noticed when I went like this originally with this sprue with the pylons on it, one was missing. I thought, oh no, not another part missing, and what I've done, I've got all the loose parts in a bag here I'd forgotten, and I've put all those in a bag, so it was in there. So whew, I thought I had another part missing then, but I have got a spares kit, so we're okay. So I'm going to carry on and get these all glued together. Okay, so we've got these all glued together now, and now we need to look at what else we're going to do. And if you remember, as I said in the instructions, we've done our wheels and tyres over here, we've done our wing tanks, we've done our engine pylons. So now we are going to look at doing the bombs. So we've got all the bombs here. I think there's 24 of them, and we've got to get these halves glued together so that they're all dry and hard, ready for working on the seams. So we're not going to be gluing 24 bombs together on camera, but we are going to do a couple. So we've got all our bomb halves on here, and we can see around here we've got some flash. And let me find that one that was really bad. Here you go. This is the one with all the lots of flash on it. The best way to remove the flash, take your knife, nice sharp blade, and just basically go around and push the flash away. Okay, we're not really so much cutting it as pushing it out of the way. Normally it just comes off very, very easily like that. But be careful you don't actually cut into the part. So it should just all snap away like so. Now that's a bit tough, that bit there. But when it's really thin like this here, it should just snap away. Okay, so we're going to take these parts off. So we've obviously got this half here with the fins on, and this half here with no fins. So we'll just take a couple of these. We'll take 3. No, we'll take 4. We'll do 4. Okay, so there's 4 of those with fins on, and then we'll take 4 without. There we go. So the thing we have to look at now, the fins are actually sort of through the centre of the bomb. So basically, what we've got to look at here is we can't actually sand these. You can't put them down as you would normally with a pair of, you know, 2 halves or something and sand them, because we've got one half. You can see we've got a recess in this side here, and then we've got a raised area here. So when they go together, the bomb will actually, the fins will be running through the center line of the bomb rather than off to one side. So what we're basically going to do is glue them together and clamp them, and then let them go hard. And again, we're going to have to make sure we get no step in them. So no real point in sanding these halves because they're all clean and everything. And as I say, if we sand this and take too much off, then obviously this will sit up against the fin and make a gap. What we can do is take this is a 400 grit stick. We could just go over it just to make sure there's no raised bits and pieces on there. And then we can put them together like so. And here's a little tip for you as well if you're new to the hobby. When you get your sanding stick and it gets loaded up like this, you can wipe it on your jeans, wipe it on a piece of denim or whatever. And some people say use a toothbrush. I prefer to use a piece of material. But we can see there the bombs, there's a slight bow and they don't want to quite go together. There's a slight gap, which is going to help us with our gluing. But we'll take our Tamiya extra thin and we'll just put a drop in here and let it capillary into the gap. and that should be plenty. I've got it on my finger. And there we go, we squeeze them together, and then just make sure you can see, if I push that way off, you can see here that we've got misalignment on that bomb. So what I'm going to do is just squeeze it until it aligns, so that we make a circle, so the parts are actually together rather than like this. Yeah, so there we go. Excuse my nails, I know they're disgusting. Okay, I'm just going to put a drop more glue in there in the front, give them a squeeze together, hold them there for a couple of minutes, and that will be fine. And then same thing on the back, make sure it's all aligned. It just gives you a lot less work to do when it comes to cleaning up the seam. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, I think I've got a cold coming. There we go. So that's that one done. So we can take a close peg and clamp it together and leave that to dry, and then we can just do the same with all the other 24. Right, so there's our bombs all done now. I think it's 24 of them there. So they're all done. The other thing I was looking at while I was on this sprue getting all the bombs off is we got these massive pylons here for the bombs to go on. So I think we'll actually glue these together as well. So we'll see how they fit together. So we'll just nip them off the sprues like this. So we'll get these off. We've got two of these obviously. Again, we've got the numbers actually on the parts, which is a nice thing. And we've got two of them which are identical. So see how they're going to fit together. Right, so we're going to give these a quick sand because they're a little bit lumpy and bumpy. So I'm going to use this stick here. This is a 400. This is an Infini Matador. These are absolutely brilliant, these little sticks. They're they can be used wet as well as dry. You can see here where we've got the, sometimes what I do is use a pencil. So if I just grab a pencil, I can show you here, and you'll see me when we do the tail planes and stuff, we'll do this. Use a pencil, and if you make some lines on it, I just want to check in the camera, you can see that, because the lead, when you go on a certain angle, it disappears. So you can see the lead there. So when you sand, you'll see the black lines remaining where it hasn't actually sanded. So often a good idea, don't use, as I say, don't use a marker pen. And you can see on here, this is the kind of thing we need to look for when we're modelling. The camera will focus. You can see there's an ejector pin mark there, and it's got a raised edge around it. And that will prevent the parts from going together. And even on brand new modern kits, even Tamiya, you'll get issues like that. So, you know, it's very, very rare you'll find it on a Tamiya kit, and probably not on one of the newer ones, but they do have it. So, you know, it's worth looking out for. And as you can see, as we're sanding here, I'm going between the pins. I don't want to sand the pins off, although quite often I will remove them. You can see here we've got an ejector pin mark there. And that's raised, so that's going to stop it going together. So again, we're going to sand that away. And it's not just, as I say, it's not just because it's an old monogram kit, it's got these issues. Everything has these issues, and it's worth looking out for. So we're just going to go around and make sure we're getting every edge is sanded. And then on this one here, we'll come along with our wider stick, because we don't have the assembly pins. Again, we've got these ejector pin marks there in the way. Again, we've got them down here, we've got them over here. So I'm not pushing, I'm just gently sanding. There we go. Now when we put them together, we should find we get a lovely fit. There we go. Absolutely lovely. I've also had, today is Saturday, August the 22nd. And I've had a number of emails from people. Thank you all. Particularly Andy. Andy Richards is one of my regular followers. He sends me lots of emails, and he emails me lots of times about different various things popping up on YouTube, planes coming in out of Fairford. So he's like my eye on the sky, if you like. So thank you, Andy, for that. Yeah, B-52s in Fairford today. Came in this morning in a surprise visit. I wish I'd known. I'd have been up there to see them come in. But I'm now trying to find out. I have a friend of a friend who is a photographer for some organisation, I don't know, and he gets the information of what's going on. So I'm trying to find out when they're going out. And unfortunately, if I do find out, I'm not going to disclose it because I probably shouldn't be. But apparently they're here to do training over Europe and Africa. So should be interesting. I definitely want to get up there and see them going in and out. And now that I've got my Raptor pickup, I can stand up in the back of the pickup bed, and that'll that should get a good vision, a good angle to look at them. There we go. So now once again we'll get all our pegs. We'll clamp all this together. You need to be careful when you're clamping, making sure you're not pulling the parts apart. For instance, if you clamp in the middle here, you will actually squeeze this together and actually pull that seam apart. So you need to be careful where you clamp. Make sure that if you're going to clamp there, clamp on an edge so it's clamping the joint together. Don't clamp it so it's like that, so all the pressure is going in the middle and pushing them apart. And we need one on that back edge there. Just get some glue in here. And there we go. Now if you notice, I didn't make much fuss about gluing them together like I did with these. It's because when they've got all the bombs on them and they're glued to the wing, none of the seams will really be, you know, that visible. So I haven't worried about holding it apart and making sure I get plenty of glue in there and all that. Because, you know, when it's glued to the wing, that's going to hold that pylon together anyway. So you don't need to fuss too much. Another little tip, something I learned from Phil Flory, when you're doing trailing edges and stuff, you can take your glue and you can do that. Hold the part so that the part is upwards, and then the glue won't run down the sides if it should get to that point of wanting to. You can do the same on the leading edge there. Hold it upside down, get the glue in. There you go. I'll tell you what, I reckon we're going to have a 3-hour-long video on sanding joints, because it's just going to be loads and loads of seam work to do. So I'm going to go on and get the other one done, this other one here, and we'll call that a day for this part 2. So I'll see you for part 3 very soon, and we'll get on with the build and we'll get some painting done and everything. So yeah, I'll see you then. Happy modelling, stay safe, and basically get your B-52 out and start building. Bye for now.